And welcome back, everyone. This is Happenings Q&A. Frank and Kim Carmichael with you. Well, at last count, over 28 million viewers have seen the interview with Lance Armstrong and Oprah Winfrey. Now, the former cycling champion came clean, admitting to his use of banned substances and blood transfusions in all of his Tour de France wins, calling it one big lie that became too big to sustain. Now, we can't help but wonder if his interview achieved the desired goal. Our next guest, Mitch Leff, says, people will forgive someone who makes a mistake or does something illegal or unethical if they admit what they did and show a real effort to change. But when someone lies for years and years in interviews after interview, it is very difficult to forgive. Now, Mitch Leff is a 25-year public relations veteran and the founder of Leff & Associates, a high-powered PR firm that's based in Atlanta, Georgia. Good afternoon and welcome, Mitch.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
No, thank you for joining us today. So, was that a good venue to choose, Oprah?
Well, yeah, obviously he chose it very carefully. He chose someone who is known to be somewhat sympathetic to fallen stars, as it were, and someone who has a good reputation, has a large audience.
Yeah. But if he was your client, would you have advised him to do that?
Well, we do a lot of crisis communications for clients, and, we always tell
Is that
folks,
code for damage control?
Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes a crisis is averted by doing a little good planning for it, which is what we encourage our clients to do. But if you get into a crisis situation, sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's not. You could, for instance, have a restaurant that someone drives a car through the front door, as happened here in Atlanta this morning, and obviously that's not your fault, but you've got to do a little damage control, as you said, to make sure your customers know that you're open for business and it's a safe place to go, and you want them back. But we always encourage our clients to do, a couple of things when you get into this kind of situation. And the first is to respond very quickly. The second is to reply and respond honestly. And the third is to, answer the questions as completely as you can. And, if you look at what Lance Armstrong has done, and this has been a multi-year issue, he really has not done much of that. He certainly has not responded quickly. And he has been denying this for many, many years.
And not just denying, vehemently denying.
Well, yeah, vehemently denying and attacking those people who have been making these accusations against him.
And suing people for saying that he did what he did.
Exactly. You look at it and you say, it's one thing to come on Oprah's show and say, I'm sorry, I made these mistakes, but I would look at it and say, what kind of restitution is he going to make to, as you said, all of those people who's been attacking over the years?
And he's cost them plenty of money, too.
Well, exactly. And, I'm not an attorney, but, in some respects, you might look at it and say he's been stealing from people.
That's a good point.
There's the guy who was, maybe came in second in the Tour de France, who would have won, perhaps, for example, if Lance Armstrong hadn't been doping.
But isn't one of isn't one of Armstrong's claims that everybody does it, though?
Is that a defense, though?
Not in my book, but apparently in some people's.
But Mitch, isn't that what kids are always telling their parents? But Mom, Dad, everybody else is doing it.
Well, I've got kids, and we always try to raise them with good character, and good character means you do the right thing whether everyone else is doing it or not, whether people can see you doing it or whether you're doing it in a room by yourself with no one else watching or observing.
So, Mitch, am I safe to assume you watched the interviews?
I watched the full 3 hours of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did you go away with the feeling that he still wants to compete?
Absolutely. In fact, he was very clear in the second part of the interview that he does want to compete. He is, forbidden from competing in any what they call sanctioned events right now. So I think he is hoping that in some fashion, he can get back into the sanctioned world competition and be racing again. You know, he is very obviously. He's a competitor. You listen to him, you see him. That's what he is. He's someone who, you know, as he says, defeated cancer, won the Tour de France. You know, worked hard, and achieved. And I think he's having trouble looking at, you know, the rest of his life and thinking, I can't compete anymore. That's who I am. I'm the,
right. And
I'm the competitor.
You answered a question that I kind of had in the back of my head, thinking, why doesn't this guy just go away? Go buy a place on Hawaii somewhere and bicycle around the island and go away. But I think you hit it right on the head. He has that competitiveness in him, and he just can't walk away from it.
Exactly. And and there are a lot of people that becomes their life, as with so many people and so many things that they do. And one aspect of their life becomes their life, and that defines who they are. But we talked about, when you're responding in a crisis, responding quickly. As I said, he hasn't responded quickly.
No.
He also hasn't responded honestly.
And
he's been lying for years.
Yeah,
So
how long has it been? It's been, at least 10 years, right?
10 or 15 years. Going back. Depends how far back you go. But I don't think anyone watching this would necessarily think that he's being completely honest still. It's very clear that he has carefully thought about what he wants to say, how far he wants to go.
Without a doubt. That's the distinct feeling I got, is that it was very well rehearsed.
So he hasn't exposed himself. He hasn't bared his soul to the public.
Well, he's trying to. It seemed like he's bearing his soul, but he chose Oprah, which, as I said, I think is something of a sympathetic interview. But if he really wants to show that he's sorry, that he wants to make things right, he should sit down with some of these sports writers that he's been screaming at for the last 10 years, saying, you're lying about me. These guys who have written books about his doping and his cheating and the scandal. There was a ESPN writer I saw the other day who was so upset that he had been being attacked for years about what he'd been saying about Armstrong, and now it turns out to be entirely true. It's like a classic boy cries wolf scenario. He's had too many years of saying this isn't true for people to suddenly believe that it's 100% sea change, and he's all of a sudden now he's telling the truth entirely. And even if he's telling some of the truth, he's clearly not telling the complete truth, which is the third part of managing a crisis. He's not talking about the people who helped him, the doctors and the race, maybe team members. I don't know if there were race officials involved. He didn't do this by himself, and I think he doesn't want to get other people in trouble because there's probably going to be legal issues for him. But he needs to answer those questions. Who else knew and who else was involved?
So what's your gut feeling? Do you think that 5 years down the road we're going to see a comeback out of him? We're going to see him racing again? Or do you think that 5 years down the road we'll be saying, Lance who?
Mitch, you know what I think? I think there's a reality show on the horizon, cycling with the stars.
That may be his only way to get a paycheck at this point. It's his way back. Honestly, looking at it from a corporate sponsor perspective, I don't think anybody will touch him for years.
No, he's tainted goods for a long time. I got to believe that.
Mitch, 5 years, 10 years, maybe, but then it's too late for him to be racing.
Right.
Too old.
Mitch, I read that you say when a company or a brand is in a crisis situation, as Lance Armstrong has been for many years, there are generally 3 rules to follow. What are your rules?
Well, the 3 rules are, we've been talking about them a little bit. The 3 rules are respond quickly, respond honestly, and respond completely. And those are the 3 rules, and you can detail those out. But if you abide by those rules when you're in trouble, you'll be much better off. You see companies that get into trouble because an oil spill happens, for example, and they take days to say anything. And then when they do respond, they don't quite tell you really what's going on, and they don't give you all the details. Mm-hmm. And honestly, in this day and age, the details will come out. The truth will come out. So it's trying to give partial truths or give pieces of information. If that ever worked, it doesn't work anymore. So, honesty is, as I say, honesty is the best policy in most cases. Now, there are sometimes some legal details, but, for the most part, we encourage companies to be as forthcoming and as honest as they can, with kind of keeping some of those legal issues kind of sometimes in the back of their minds. You look at a good example. Look at Beyonce, what she's going through right now. Did she lip sync or not? Maybe she did, but she, it's been 3 days since the inauguration. She hadn't said a word about it.
No.
There are other people saying things about it, and the story is kind of dragging on and on. I think people are waiting for her to say something about it.
My daughter's third grade class is even talking about it.
It's at some level it's a silly thing for the country to be talking about. I judge by what's in the first 10 minutes of the Today Show.
But it's either talking about Beyonce lip syncing or Michelle Obama's bangs. I mean, what else is there to talk about these days, right?
No.
I mean, we'll just ignore that we're falling deeper and deeper into this horrible recession. But hey, she looks good with those bangs, doesn't she?
There's the lighter side that is maybe easier to talk about, but. Lip syncing is not necessarily a horrible thing, and there are certain situations, I think, where it's certainly appropriate and necessary. She could come out and make a quick statement, said, yes, I did it, here's why I did it, boom, done.